Before the mug, before the quiet disappointment that settled into our bones like winter, before the word betrayal ever crossed my mind, there was love. Or at least, what I believed love was supposed to look like. My name is Evelyn Harper, and this is not a story about a cheap ceramic mug. It's a story about how an entire lifetime can be slowly poured out in small, invisible sacrifices, until one day you look down and realize the cup is empty. Thomas and I met in 1980 in a town so small in Ohio that everyone knew when you bought new cartons. We were young, we were broke, and we were hopeful in a way that only people with nothing yet to lose can be. Thomas worked at a local auto shop. His hands were always rough, knuckles nicked and scarred, smelling faintly of oil no matter how much soap he used. I was a school teacher, grading papers late into the night, red pens smudged on my fingers, coffee growing cold beside me. We didn't talk about dreams much, not because we didn't have them, but because life demanded practicality first. We talked about rent. We talked about groceries. We talked about how long we could stretch a paycheck. And somehow, love grew quietly in those conversations. We married in a small church, borrowed decorations, a secondhand dress altered by my mother, no honeymoon, no regrets. We believed in building things slowly, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, promise by promise. Our first house wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, peeling paint, a furnace that rattled like it might give up every winter, but it was ours. Thomas fixed what he could. I painted walls between lesson plans. We ate on mismatched plates and laughed like it was luxury. When I got pregnant the first time, Thomas cried. When I got pregnant the second time, he laughed and said, "Well, guess we're really doing this now." Our daughter came first. She was quiet, thoughtful, loved puzzles. She held my finger with a seriousness that felt ancient. Michael came in 1983, and the moment I held him, something in me changed permanently. Michael was joy in human form, big eyes, loud laugh, curious hands that touched everything. Thomas used to say, "This boy is going to cost us a fortune," and we laughed. We didn't know how true that would become, not in money alone, but in everything else we would give. Michael wanted more stories at bedtime, more toys, more attention, and we gave it, because that's what parents do, right? We stayed up later, worked extra shifts, put our own wants on hold. When Michael was 6, he asked why we never went on vacation like his classmates. Thomas smiled and said, "Because someday, buddy, we'll take you everywhere." I nodded, even though I already knew that someday would never really come. When Michael was 8, our daughter died. I still can't say it quickly. I still can't say it without feeling like the air leaves my chest. An illness that moved too fast, a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and fear, a goodbye that no parent should ever have to say. Michael didn't fully understand. He just knew his sister was gone. And from that moment on, without ever saying it aloud, Thomas and I made a silent vow. Michael would never feel loss again if we could help it. That vow shaped everything that followed. Michael became the center of our universe. If he wanted a toy, we found the money. If he wanted lessons, we enrolled him. If he wanted reassurance, we wrapped him in it. When his bike broke at 10, we didn't fix it. We bought a new one. When he turned 16, we scraped together enough for a used car, rusted, imperfect, but freedom on 4 wheels. Thomas worked weekends, I tutored after school, and every time we were exhausted, we told ourselves, it's temporary. College nearly broke us. Michael got accepted out of state. We were proud, terrified, quietly panicking. We took out loans. We dipped into savings meant for retirement. I remember lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if love was supposed to feel this anxious. Michael called often, but the calls changed. They became shorter, distracted, always ending with something he needed. By the time Michael graduated college, Thomas and I were already tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Not the kind of tired that comes from long days or late nights, the deeper kind. The kind that settles into your bones when responsibility becomes a permanent state. Michael came home for the summer after graduation, his childhood bedroom unchanged, trophies still lining the shelves, old posters curling at the corners. He talked about big plans, big cities, big careers, big dreams. And we listened with pride and quiet fear, because dreams are expensive. Michael's first job didn't last long. Bad management, he said. Unfair expectations, not what I signed up for. We nodded. Then came the first real request. Mom, Dad, I'm a little short this month. A little short turned into rent. Rent turned into utilities. Utilities turned into groceries. Thomas and I looked at each other across the kitchen table, unspoken worry hanging between us. But I remembered Michael at 8 years old, sitting silently in his sister's empty room. So I wrote the check. Sarah moved in soon after. She brought furniture, opinions, expectations. She liked things new. She liked things nice. And she liked them quickly. She spoke about money the way some people talk about weather, something that just happens. When the car broke down, she sighed. Well, that's just unfortunate timing, and somehow the timing always involved us. The house came next. A modest place, they said, but modest is relative. We just need help with the down payment, Michael explained. Once we're settled, we'll be fine. Thomas hesitated. I felt it, the pause, the doubt. But I spoke first. How much? That was the moment, though I didn't know it yet, that the balance shifted permanently, from parents to providers. Once you become someone's safety net, they stop learning how to balance on their own. Every emergency found its way to us. Medical bills, credit cards, braces for the kids before the kids even existed. We never asked for receipts, never asked when it would be paid back. Love doesn't keep score. That's what I told myself. In 2015, Lily was born. Tiny, perfect, loud. Holding her erased every doubt. Every sacrifice suddenly felt worth it. Sarah cried in my arms. We don't know what we'd do without you, she whispered. And I believed that was gratitude, not dependency. 2 years later, Ethan arrived. Another miracle. Another reason to give more. Hospital bills piled up. We're drowning, Michael said over the phone. So we paid. That was when I started the notebook. Not because I was angry, because I was scared. Small entries at first. $2,300, hospital. $4,800, roof repair. $1,200, car transmission. Thomas didn't like it. Why write it down? He asked. Just so I know, I said. I didn't yet know what I was really preparing for. Their visits followed a rhythm. First the hugs, then the small talk, then the pause. And then, while we're here, Sarah always let Michael ask. Smart, really. My sister Clara noticed before I did. They don't visit you, she said gently. They visit your wallet. I snapped back. You don't understand. But deep down, I did. Thomas and I began arguing in whispers, not because we were ashamed, but because we didn't want the kids to hear. We can't keep doing this, he said one night. What if they fail? I replied. And what if we do? He asked. That question haunted me. At a family reunion, I overheard Michael talking. They help us out, he said casually. They always have. Not gratitude, expectation. And I realized something terrifying. Michael didn't see our help as sacrifice. He saw it as normal. Somewhere along the way, love stopped being presence. It became provision.
And without noticing, we taught our son that love meant access. We still believed things would balance out. We still believed one day we'd rest. We were wrong.
By the time Lily started kindergarten, Thomas and I had stopped talking about retirement altogether. Not because we had decided against it, but because it felt like discussing a fantasy. Retirement was something other people did, people who didn't have grown children who still needed saving. Every request came wrapped in the same words, just this once. Just this once became a pattern, a rhythm, a responsibility that never ended. Michael called less to ask how we were. He called to update us on problems. And problems, I learned, can multiply faster than solutions. Sarah's tone changed over the years. At first, there was warmth, then politeness, eventually efficiency. She spoke to me like someone negotiating terms. Well, we could handle it ourselves, she'd say, but with the kids, it's just so hard. And I'd feel the familiar pull of guilt tighten around my chest. Lily and Ethan were innocent in all of this. Lily loved to draw. She'd sit at our kitchen table for hours, crayons scattered everywhere, tongue pressed between her teeth in concentration. Ethan loved machines. Anything with gears or buttons fascinated him, just like Thomas. Those moments reminded us why we kept saying yes. They were pure, unaware of the invisible debts being stacked around them. One quiet afternoon, after another wire transfer, I added up the numbers. I didn't plan to, I just did. $350,000. The number stared back at me from the page like an accusation. I closed the notebook and sat there for a long time, not angry, just empty. Thomas's back worsened. Doctor visits turned into prescriptions. Prescriptions turned into conversations we didn't want to have. You need to slow down, the doctor said. Thomas nodded, then picked up another shift because Michael needed help with school tuition for Lily. At night, fear crept in quietly. What if something happened to us? What if we needed help? Would Michael show up, or would he send a card and a reason? In late 2019, they visited for Thanksgiving. Sarah noticed the old furniture. "Have you thought about upgrading?" she asked. I smiled politely. Inside, something cracked. Clara was blunt. "You're teaching him that love is endless resources," she said, "and you're teaching yourself that your worth is what you give." I wanted to argue. Instead, I cried. 2020 stripped away illusions. Michael lost work temporarily. We became their lifeline. Groceries, utilities, school supplies. I stopped writing amounts. It hurt too much. I started dreading the phone because love shouldn't feel like that. Yet, it did. One night, Thomas said something he'd never said before. "I'm afraid," he whispered, "for us." That was when I realized this wasn't just generosity anymore. It was survival. We had built a system where we were necessary, but not appreciated. And still, even then, we never imagined something as small as a mug would be the thing to finally open our eyes. Before our 45th anniversary arrived, Thomas and I had already lowered our expectations. No big party, no speeches, no surprises. Just dinner at home, a quiet toast, maybe a card. At our age, presents mattered more than presentation. Still, a small part of me hoped. I hate admitting that, but hope is stubborn. The package arrived 3 days early. Plain brown box, no return address that caught my eye. I left it on the counter until Thomas came home. We opened things together. Always had. He washed his hands slowly, joints stiff, movements careful. I noticed how much older he looked that year, how much older we both did. "Probably something from Michael," he said. I smiled. or tried to. I cut the tape. Inside was bubble wrap. One item. A mug. White, cheap, light in my hands. I turned it slowly. World's okayest parents. There was a price sticker on the bottom. $4.99. For a moment, I genuinely thought it was a joke that would make sense once the real gift appeared. I looked back into the box. Nothing else. Thomas didn't say anything. He just stared. The room felt smaller. I waited for him to laugh. He didn't. Instead, his shoulders sagged, just slightly, like something heavy had finally been set down inside him. After everything, he said quietly, that was all. I picked up the mug again, tracing the letters with my thumb. Okayest. Not best, not even good, just adequate. I told myself not to overreact. I told myself it was humor, but humor usually comes with warmth. This came with distance. I called Michael. He answered on the third ring. Hey, Mom. There was noise in the background, a television, laughter. Did you get our gift? He asked. Yes, I said. Pause. It's funny, right? He said. Sarah thought it was hilarious. I swallowed. Oh, I said. Yes, funny. That's all? He asked. That's all, I said. He said he had to go. That night, Thomas and I sat at the kitchen table long after the dishes were done. The mug sat between us. It felt absurd that something so small could carry so much weight. But it wasn't the mug. It was what it represented. I pulled out the notebook. For the first time, Thomas asked to see it. Page by page, line by line. Numbers, dates, notes scribbled in margins. College, wedding, house, hospital, cars, vacations they never invited us on. Thomas rubbed his eyes. I had no idea it was this much, he said. Neither did I whispered. The total stared back at us. Over $350,000. Our lives on paper. I didn't feel angry. I felt foolish, and grief washed over me, not for money, but for dreams quietly buried, trips we never took, rest we never allowed ourselves, a future we kept postponing. We cried that night, not loudly, just quietly, together. And somewhere between tears and silence, something shifted. The next morning felt different, clear, painful, but clear. Thomas made coffee and didn't reach for his pain medication. We can't keep living like this, he said. I nodded. For the first time in decades, we were united not in giving, but in stopping. We met with Mr. Reynolds a week later. He listened without interrupting. When we finished, he said, "You're allowed to change your mind." No one had ever said that to us before. The will was rewritten, carefully, thoughtfully. The house would go to a women's shelter I volunteered at. Our investments would fund scholarships for future teachers. The grandchildren would have a trust, structured, protected, limited. Michael and Sarah would receive family photographs, memories, not money. We practiced saying no. It felt unnatural, like learning